Welcome, everyone, to the Ohio Fly Tying Guild. This will be session 5. I'm Gary Begley. Thanks for showing up. And I'll go ahead and jump right into what I have planned tonight, discussing some dubbing loops. Well, I'll be scratching the surface on dubbing loops. There's a lot of material to cover there. Probably some of you have used them. Most of you have used a dubbing loop somewhere along the line. I'm going to show a couple different ways to tie them and the various tools that we use. So I'll go ahead and switch to the vise and show you a quick, simple dubbing loop. Yeah, I get a twister. Run the thread down around my finger, come up, line that down, come forward. And I'm going to use this style. I'll show you three different styles of dubbing loop. Twisters or spinners or whatever you prefer to call them. It's some fine squirrel knit dubbing material that I have over here. I'll be using that later. This is one method, one of many methods. Notice I'm not using any wax of any sort. Got those hairs trapped in between. I'm simply going to spin. The spinner portion is off camera just barely, but I'll show you how that works. And then it's simply wrap onto the hook. I'm going to use the rotary function to go a little quicker. This type of dubbing and this method comes up with a really nice buggy body. And just tie it off. A real quick, simple demonstration of a dubbing loop. Give a little haircut. I've seen some tiers tie a body similar to that and then cut at an angle. So it'll give you the taper. Other camera. I got different types. These I refer to these as a hook, dubbing loop hook. I've heard these called dubbing hooks, dubbing twisters, dubbing spinners, dubbing whirls. I usually land on the word spinner, but this is a hook style where it just simply hooks around the loop that you made. There's this style, much larger. I have helped teach beginning tying classes many times in the past, and I knew that the students were not going to have a dubbing loop twister. So you should recognize this to be a paper clip that's straightened out. Hook that in the loop and twist it. That works just as well. There's another style. This is like the hook type, but it's got a loop in it. A tying class that I took many, many years ago, the instructor had a brother that was a machinist. So he made this and he had an outlet to sell them because his brother taught tying. And I was a sucker for that and fell into it. But I have really gotten to like this over the years. It's real heavy because it's cut out of one piece of metal. And it's what I call the fixed type of spinner, shaped like so. One end of the loop, the other end of the loop, and then you can twist it just like normal. I got this one. I got two of them that's got ball bearings. This is the same, obviously the same design as this, but I can twist right here. It's ball bearings inside and spins it really quick, sometimes too quickly, I think. And then there's another type. I tend to lean toward these, where I can hook one end of the loop here, one end of the loop here. And as I pull tension against the hook, it tightens these up. So up like this with no tension on the tool. I can put dubbing in however I wish. And when I pull down, it tightens up the loop and I can twist this one again, has ball bearings. And of course, there's this type, same design, the two eyes, and you just use the weight of the spinner to spin it, similar to a top. I'll jump into the first fly. And I'm going to tie a small fly, real small fly that I'm going to tie it on size 16, which is probably too large for a midge. It is called a polywing midge. Just a standard dry fly hook. I use 70 denier thread. Start it about in the center. From that center point, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go 4 wraps forward, and that's going to mark my spot. I don't want anything until I get to the wing and the hackle. I don't want anything in front of that spot. Thread base back. Now I'm going to show. Really don't need to do this for this fly, but I can show you how to tie a buggy body and a smooth body. What I'm going to do is flatten the thread out. Of course, as you spin, every time you take a turn, it puts a twist in the thread. Let the thread spin. You guys can't quite see it off camera, but I've been spinning like crazy. Going counterclockwise to undo the wraps that I put in as I tied. All right, I don't know if you guys can see it well. Probably not. I've got the thread pretty well flattened. Now I have spent way too much time trying to stab through there. And there's a company makes a thread splitter, which I've never really had much luck for that. The best way, or with that, best way that I've found is to lay this on my thumbnail, and you can just drive your bodkin right through. And that opens up and gives me what I'm going to utilize as a dubbing loop. You know, I've got some beaver dubbing I'm going to use. Used synthetic last month. And I didn't need to use dubbing wax. Real synthetic, real long strands. And it dubbed on really, really well. Now, I'm going to spin my bobbin. If you can see the bobbin tube there spinning, and that's going to capture that dubbing in between there, in between the two halves of the thread. And I could just wrap it like that, and I would get a real buggy body. And of course, I can help it if I wish. I really want a smoother body on this fly, so I'm going to help the dubbing a little bit, so to speak. Depends on what you want, the style of bodies that you want for your fly. Okay. So there's the body. Need my polypropylene yarn. Got some white. Smaller sizes, you'd probably want to split this and just choose half of it. For example, whatever thickness you deem appropriate. I'm going to go ahead and use the full piece of yarn. You notice I've left it long in the front, especially, and long in the rear. So I'll have a handle to pick it up with to get it trimmed properly. Spinning my thread counterclockwise. Hold this right here, 45-degree angle. pull straight down with a pinch loop. Notice I've got my index finger on the backside to help me help keep it from spinning around the hook. A few wraps to bind it down. Put this off about length of the bend, or the bend of the hook slightly longer. I get this trimmed off. I usually would trim this at an angle, but I'm going to trim it more straight across intentionally. So it'll be a little straighter there, so whenever I run the thread base here for my hackle, it's not going to be going at an angle. And that would make it difficult to wrap the hackle because it would want to slide down off that ring. Okay. Hackle, dull side, shiny side. I like to tie down the shiny side forward. And notice I got some barbs taken off. Some over here, more over here. That's because that's the side that's going to start wrapping around the hook first. That's going to lead. Tie in bare stem. That way I end up with all the barbs going 90 degrees to the hook shank as opposed to shooting back rearward. That way. Wrap over this way. Just pulled it out. I think I will redo that. A little further. Further back than I wanted it. There we go. That's better. Cut some of this raked off. It's going to be a little bit too long. And wrapping my bare stem or racus. I take care not let this twist on me. I think 2 or 3 wraps with this fly is plenty. My last hackle or last wrap slid. Yep. Okay. Always catch a few barbs when I'm tying live on camera. I don't know if you guys will believe me or not, but I've tied about 10 of these and didn't catch any of these sticking out like this before I got on camera. That's it, split finish. The thread, this hackle. And there is a polywing Midge. Let's see, I got a question down there in the chat. I can see what I tied on was a 16 size. Asking what sizes. I would go from 18 down to 24 if you can see to get a 24 tied and keep the materials thin down well enough. Anybody have any other questions or comments? All right.
Yeah. Why did you cut the hackle off last? Usually after I tie it in, I trim it before I would finish.
That's just a habit I've gotten into. There's no particular reason. I like to try to bind it down so it's angling rearward as opposed to out front, so I don't need to worry about getting it chopped off.
When's the reasons for using a dubbing loop, Gary?
Dubbing loop. I'm just going to start with that. Thanks for mentioning that. Most everyone says, "Well, I'll tie a really buggy body with it," but you can tie a nice smooth body with it as well. It's the way my best answer for that is I can get a lot more materials on the hook quicker, as far which you'll see on the next fly. Anybody else ever heard any other ideas as far as reasoning behind using the dubbing loop?
An easy way to mix different colors of stuff and even different types of materials.
Yeah, there was actually that was Al Beatty. He's got a book on dubbing, which I bought recently. Next month I'm planning on sharing some tips out of that. And that is one of them. You can dub once you got the loop in a V shape, you can put dubbing on one side, put dubbing on the other side of a different color. And when you twist it, then you got mixed colors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you look at the OPST site, they have videos and they have some guys do for the steelhead flies tying lots of different materials in at the same time with the dubbing loops. It's unbelievable what they're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just setting in two different materials at the same time or dubbing on each end of the loop.
2, 3, 4 materials. Yeah, it's it's really, I wouldn't do it. No.
All right, so I'll go ahead and get started on the second fly. And I have something else I want to show you as well. So we'll start over here. Get rid of these. I want to use pine squirrel dubbing. The next fly is a pine squirrel nymph. And I didn't find it in a book or anything of that nature. I just said, oh, okay. What I want to do is tie fly that I can utilize dubbing loops all the way through. So I can use some pine squirrel. This is a pine squirrel, full skin, obviously. This one's obviously zonk. I'm going to use a combination of these two. And I'm going to utilize this to get my dubbing. And if any of you haven't seen this, I'm going to rake the dubbing. Go back to the other camera and get a better shot. This is a dubbing rake. It's a little miniature rake. And this is a little bit better, a little pricier one, but it does work a little bit better. Hairline sells them. And what I will do, what I have done, and I'll show you how I do. Got squirrel laying here, obviously, and I'm going to up in here. Got some from out of there. And I'm simply going to rake this out. Depending on the angle that you hold this tool, you can get a lot more guard hair. Like, see that bare spot there? I got all the hair out of that. And if you hold it down at a lower angle, what I have found that you can get just dubbing. A really quick way. Harvest some dubbing off of there. And that way you can control the colors. You see it's got this band of darker brown going through the center, lighter brown here, and real light over here on the side. And what I'm going to do is utilize this dubbing on the fly that we're going to tie, that I'm going to tie for the abdomen and the thorax of the nymph. And the light was real light, as you can see, and the darker color was much more pleasing to my eye anyway. So what I've done, in order to get the dark color, I just took some dark dubbing like I just showed you, And what I've done to get the abdomen color, I like it a little bit lighter, is taken some of the dark, mixed about half of it, about 50-50 mixture with the lighter color, which I got from over on the side of this little guy, and come up with my own custom color. And show you what the fly looks like first off. I kind of changed a couple things. Those of you who got pictures of it, or availability for pictures, this is a different fly. I changed it a little bit. I'll be quite honest with you, I got a little bit better tying the collar, for one thing. And I kind of changed the proportions and mixed the colors differently. But that's what I'm going for. Just for the generic nymph looking real buggy. I've found over the years that the buggier the fly looks in certain waters, certain days, the better it fishes. So I want to tie something that was really buggy looking. And I think I came up with it. So we'll get started. I'm gonna tie it on a size 12. I would recommend 12 down to as small as you care to tie it on. I've got a size 12. It's just a 2x long standard nymph hook. And I got about 10 turns of lead on. Use brown 70 denier thread. Start the thread over here, close to the hook eye. I'm just going to zip back on the other end and build up just a little bit of a ramp, thread dam, if you will, on both ends of the lead, just to keep it where I want it, as opposed to it sliding up and down the hook shank. Okay. Now, like I mentioned, I'm going to use a little bit of a zonker strip that came off of the zonker one that was laying over on the table for a tail. And gather enough of these up to where it looks like a tail to me. This be about half the shank length on the hook. Spin the thread counterclockwise so it'll cooperate with me. I'll angle toward the rear of the hook. 45-degree angle, and thread torque take it up on top. And then have a look at what I've done and see that it's a little bit too long. You can adjust that, which is why I only took 2 wraps. There's some excess. It's not critical to keep this nice and clean under here because it'll be a nymph, a real buggy nymph. And I've got some wire. I decided to go with copper brown wire as opposed to silver, which I probably have in the recipe. Yeah, I put silver. This just seems to match the color better. It really doesn't matter. Just once I quit using just the light color for the abdomen and blended it This color wire just looks better. To me, I can't say what it looks like for the fish. Now, we've got some of the lighter color that I mixed up. Well, there's a dubbing loop. Get my tool whack over here. Get a much longer loop. I'm gonna go across here and bind that down. I tied for many years with dubbing loops and just wrap back up to it as opposed to crossing over. The whole point of this apparently is we just want to get this V closed off up here. It's entirely possible for if you don't close it off, one thread may stay here and the other thread might slip down and it's not going to tighten up the way it should all the way up to the hook. So I am going to use a little bit of wax for this procedure. I'm just going to use some good old premium dubbing wax. Next month, I'm planning on showing. I'll show this and explain it a little better, and I have a couple other types of dubbing that I'll explain. And notice this is a tip that Al taught me out of Fly Tire magazine a long time ago. Don't run this way up where it's sticking out at the top of the tube. It's just about the thread thickness width sticking out up there. That keeps it much neater. So you don't get big blobs of dubbing wax that end up in your body, and it's not going to look good at all. So I'm going to get my tool in. I think if I bring this up this way, you guys can see when I pull. I'm going to back up. When I pull on the tool, there's two fingers collapse. That leaves the loop open. I want to tighten it up. All I got to do is pull. I'm just simply going to set some dubbing in here. I'm going to leave it nice and buggy. Way too much. Pull down, it's going to tighten it up. And adjust things a little. And this is the one that's got the ball bearings. I'm going to spin it. It begins to look like I want it. And wrap an abdomen. Like that off. Something that will lessen the chances of me cutting my working thread. Might need to do a little bit of trimming, but I'll go ahead and wrap my rib first. That may well change the appearance of everything. Now to wrap it. Offering this up so I can steady the hook. The rest of the wire. Now we'll go to the dark dubbing. Don't really see a reason to put a wing case on this particular fly. It would be very simple to do so, but loop number 2. Darker color. Pull in here. Pull down on that, and it's not going to go anywhere. And actually, I can come in and make some adjustments if need be. Looks like I better go with just a little bit more dubbing. Loosen my tension on this tool. Opens up, lets me in. And spin again. Probably doesn't matter which direction you're going to wrap it in or twist it in, because we're not going very far as on the length of the hook shank. But I am turning it counter or clockwise, excuse me. It'll actually tighten the dubbing slightly as we go. I can get this built up. A little bit larger diameter. Once I get the collar on, it's not going to be visible anyway. Now I need somewhat of a thread base for my collar. I really think the barb is going to be a problem, but we'll get rid of them. One more dubbing loop. Actually, I'm going to use a different style. I better put this in here so I don't lose it before I go get my other tool. Let's use the hook. Type this little one. And I'm going to use a little bit of dubbing wax. I wouldn't have to on this. And I'm going to get a piece of the zonked spread. I'm going to cut this part that I took the tail off of free. Now I'm just going to get about a 1/2 inch, roughly, along the length of this. Cut that off. These are all standing out 90 degrees from the leather. My other tool in. So I don't have to pull tension on it in order for it to tighten up. All I gotta do is get my finger out of there. And it'll tighten out. Put that in, take my finger out. And I've got that trapped in there. And you can adjust the length. Get it as straight as you wish. Straight up through. I'm going to spin this just a little bit, 3 or 4 turns, tighten things up a bit. And this, with all the things up, is going to be my collar. And adjust it now. The way I'm going to use my bodkin to hold the thread up. And I'm going to spin the tool. And that spins my material. I'll stroke this back as I wrap. Out of material, I'll quit wrapping. If I block your vision there for a minute. Finish, get rid of the excess. I'm going to comb that collar forward and then backward again. And there is a pine squirrel net. There's all pine squirrel except for the rib. Let's see, I've got one over here that I had wet this morning. Still hasn't dried all the way. But once it gets in the water, all these are going to lay back anyway, so there's not much point in worry about combing or priming or prepping them any more so than what I have. So there's the pine squirrel nymph. Questions, comments? I've not fished it, but I'm anxious to.
That is identical to one of my favorite flies with a couple of minor changes. And what I wanted to comment about fishing it, you haven't fished it. That thing, as it comes across the current, it creepy crawls in the current like you wouldn't believe because of the buggy hackle you've got and the buggy body. Just phenomenal.
Great.
Just kind
Appreciate
of wiggles
that.
and squirms in the current.
All right. Anybody else have any comments? Up, I see Dick made it. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Gary.
Has anyone else noticed the buggier the fly, or maybe if you take a fly and it looks really good and you start catching a few fish with it and it starts looking really buggy and a little disturbed, so I'll say, it seems like it's fishing better.
Oh, Al says yes.
I
Yeah,
don't know if the fly's fishing better or if I'm doing so well with the fly that it starts getting beat up and saying looking rough. All right. Well, thanks everybody for showing up and watching.